His highly anticipated biography of Charleston Mayor Joe Raleigh was released just a day before the Charleston mayoral runoff. In this special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down exclusively with Post and Quarry columnist and author Brian Hicks. And let me go back to Tecklenburg's victory speech last night, because he said this too: "I want to be number one place for us to live." Tell me, how could he make that happen?
I don't know. I think that's the nice campaign rhetoric. It kind of flows into what he was saying. He says we're the number one destination to visit in the world, and now we want to be the number one place to live.
Yeah.
And Leon would say, "I think we already are the number one place to live,"
Right.
which was a good response. I think that was Tecklenburg's kind of tip of the hat to downtown residents who feel like the needs of tourism have been, given more weight than their needs.
Right.
And in some cases that may be true, in some cases it may not be. But I think he was tipping his hat to those folks.
Speaking of which, he later said this: "Ask not what Charleston can do for you, but what you can do for Charleston." So what can the residents do?
I don't know, but he said during the speech, he said, "We're all Parisians."
Right. Because of
Which made me say, "Ich bin Berliner," like Kennedy.
Right.
We're all, and then he said, like 2 minutes later, we freaked out because he said, "Ask not what
Right.
you can do." And I suspected 5 minutes later he was going to say, "I resolve in the next 10 years to put a Charlestonian on the moon." But I don't know. I think he was just asking for people to serve Charleston. I really don't know. It was kind of a rambling victory speech. It was extemporaneous, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think it was kind of a call for unity. That's how I read it.
And he went on to talk about the issues, as we just mentioned: West Ashley, James Allen, economic development, affordable housing, tourism, education, Paris, Mother Emanuel. And I was talking to someone on city council, and they basically said that they believe that Tecklenburg is going to be a weak mayor, and they're going to have a strong city council. Do you agree?
I think the dynamic's going to change somewhat. I don't know. That remains to be seen. It depends on how nice a guy Tecklenburg is as mayor.
Okay.
Council is definitely going to have, they're now the veterans,
Right.
the ones who've been there.
Right.
Before this, no one could argue with Mayor Riley
Right. Mm-hmm.
because he had the experience.
That's true.
I don't know. I mean, he could get pushed around a little bit. It's going to depend on him, and we'll have to see what his governing style is like.
Okay.
But the councilmen I talked to were not hostile to him. Of course, they weren't all there. So
You got to get all of them together.
you can never tell. But I would be surprised to see Charleston City Council devolve into the same sort of fighting you see on county council or school board or something like that.
Speaking of Mayor Riley, just a day before the runoff for the city of Charleston mayoral election, your new book, The Mayor, came out.
That's right. It's out now, and they're just lining, as you could see when you came in, they're lining up.
Yeah, a nice little book here. I love this. Yeah, man. Wow.
That is Pat Conroy's copy.
Yeah.
He's waiting for his address to mail that to you.
Put that down.
No. But it was great to get this done,
Right.
and it was great to work with the mayor on it, and he was extremely cooperative.
And obviously he's leaving in January, and when I spoke with him for Quintin's Close-Ups, I guess it was a week ago, he basically said he's just working hard every day. And I'm wondering, as we sit here right now, what do you think his legacy will be? Because I'm thinking it's going to be probably the International African American Museum.
I think his legacy is going to be community relationships and the building of the modern city.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he transformed this place in 40 years.
Yeah.
And to be honest, some of this would have happened naturally. I mean, it's
Right.
going to happen. Everything looks different than it did 40 years ago. But he changed the city. I mean, he completely changed it. He rebuilt it, basically. And I think that's going to be, I think modern Charleston is his legacy.
Okay.
And he made it into a modern, vibrant, sophisticated city. And at the same time, it still kind of held on to its old charm.
Right.
And he made it, I don't know, I think he made it a more tolerant place.
That's good.
And I personally, my favorite part of the story is how he stood up for equality.
Right.
And that's another one. I think his legacy, there are going to be many.
Okay. And you touched on this, but I wanted to ask you this too. What is your favorite chapter in this particular book?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I like some of the childhood chapters a lot, because those are stories that no one knows, and they're kind of funny. Even though he didn't really get in a whole lot of trouble as a kid, as you might imagine.
Right.
He was literally a Boy Scout.
Okay.
The legislative stuff, I was surprised that he was a rabble rouser. As a young man, he was a rabble rouser.
Wow.
And causing a lot of trouble up at the State House, pushing progressive politics on these guys who were a bunch of boss hogs,
Right.
basically. And but I will have to tell you
Okay.
that I think my very favorite part of this, because that's the epilogue. I love my epilogue, but the chapter where he runs for governor and is unsuccessful, and then they come back to him in 4 years and ask him to run again. We had some really personal conversations about why he chose not to run again.
Okay.
And it's kind of the emotional high point of the book when he realizes he's wanted to be governor most of his adult life. And then when it comes time to run for it, and then he falls short, and they ask him to do it again, and the Democrats basically said, "We'll keep everybody else out of the race. It's yours to go to the general election."
Wow.
And he decided he loved Charleston too much to leave, and his wife.
Oh, yeah.
But he realized that his destiny was being mayor of Charleston. It's very emotional, and I've never heard him talk about it in such terms. And it really, it's one of my favorite parts of the book, kind of the behind the scenes of the family and what him and Charlotte were saying to each other.
Right. And now that you've written The Mayor, what's next for Brian Hicks?
I was actually starting work on another book before they asked me to do the book on Mayor Riley.
Right.
So I'm going to go back to that, a book about Judge Waring.
Oh, yeah.
But I may wait until after football season.
Okay.
I may watch football for a while.
Yeah, you should. You need a break.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Brian Hicks, this is always good. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. I appreciate that.